Good morning, wonderful people. It's the 26th of April. Can you believe it? We're almost at the end of this month too, and we're on Magic Grip Monday, and we're talking today about the importance of success without stress. So I want you to think about things like, I'm just going to check what I actually wrote so I can actually talk to you about it, we're going to explore the importance of healthy and unhealthy deadlines. We're going to look why seeking approval is not the right reason to push yourself, and how to manage yourself, your time, and other people. And so, with that in mind, what I want you to think about today is, and the reason I'm telling you this story is because of what's happened for me over the weekend. So, those of you know, we've just finished our the recent 7-day Make It Happen Motivator. And so, my responsibility on that course is to get up and be motivated and excited and ready to deliver at 7 o'clock every morning, which is not really too difficult because you know that there's gorgeous people there. But what I also noticed, having talked to my accountability buddy, that I was feeling really struggling, really pushing myself out with the marketing, feeling like I had failed because of the fact that we didn't get the numbers we just set as a goal for the group. And one of the things I realized last week very quickly that I had to do is change my self-talk, because I was talking to myself and about myself as though I'd failed, rather than saying, okay, what have I learned from this experience? So one of the things about pushing yourself to these deadlines, when you set goals and when you have a deadline, they are there as something to attain. But the shift from success without stress versus success with stress, there is a healthy stress that gets you really excited and fired up and motivated and you want to do it. And then there's the other stress that comes much more from that self-talk, where you are beating yourself up, you're saying you're a failure, you're going to not do it again. And there's a different energy about it. Okay, there's a different energy, and therefore when there's a different energy about it, what happens is that your stress chemicals get activated. I'm just realizing that my microphone isn't plugged in, so I'm just going to check that, because I hate you to have a horrible crackly noise and it not be very clear. So let me just quickly do that. Poor funny on my part. And so one of the things I want you to think about is your self-talk, in terms of how you talk to yourself when you're working towards something. So the first thing, if you want success without stress, first of all, get really clear about what kind of success is that success. And for me, I've got annual goals I'm aiming for. I've broken them down into, okay, so if that's what I want to do by the end of the year, what do I need to do in this next 90 days? I've then broken that down. If that's what I want to do in the 90 days, what do I need to do this month? And when I've broken that down, I then got, okay, so if that's what I've got to do this month, what have I got to do this week? And if that's what I've got to do this week, what have I got to do today? And every single Monday, I look at my monthly goals, I look at my quarterly goals, and I remind myself of my annual goals. And I check in with myself and take some quiet time out and go, okay, so given that, what needs to happen this week? But as we go through time, what can happen is we start to feel like we're getting behind. And I was talking to somebody this week as well, that feeling of getting behind. And if you ever get that kind of like, I'm getting behind, there's no point, that you get into that heaviness of feeling like a failure, that's when it's really important to go back and go, okay, look at what's worked, look at what progress has been made, and look at what has changed. Maybe when you set the goal, there was, you've got new information since then. Maybe something else has come in. So a good example this weekend, my husband was, his self-talk on Sunday morning was, oh my God, this tiling's taken forever. We're not getting anywhere. Oh my God, this is so slow. And I said to him, so before that we were doing that, because we started the project on like the 19th, 20th of March, and we're now a month in. And we've got until the 6th of May, which is when the guys come in to fit the flooring. So we have to finish, we've got this time frame to do. We've had to push that back by a week. But his self-talk, he's generally someone who's very sensory, very in the moment, and his time profile is sort of like right now. And he likes to be, he's also a starter and finisher. So because he's a starter and finisher, and he's in this time frame kind of person, he likes to be able to start and finish everything in the same day. And so often his self-talk is not very good if he hasn't done it a day. Even when he does his bike rides, like he'll do 180 miles in a day. He pushes everything to get it done in these short time frames, which is really great, and it's one of his strengths until it isn't. And so one of the things we were doing yesterday is, one of the things I'm doing as his partner, but also because of the training in the coaching world, is I just putting his attention on what has worked, what he's been doing. So he has, in the last 4 weeks, he's learned how to plumb. He's drilled out the concrete. It took 3 weeks basically to build a false wall, plumb it all in, test all the water, learn how to do tiling. He's done floor tiling before, and he's done little tiles around the kitchen, but not these big tiles going up the whole of the wall. So he's been online. So he's taught himself how to tile. He's taught himself how to plumb. And he's done 3 weeks of preparation work. And then yesterday he went, oh, wait there. Let me just go back to the pictures on my phone of the very first day I started tiling. He went, oh, I've only been tiling for a week. And instantly you could just see the pressure coming off of his system, because he was like, his self-talk was like, it's not going fast enough, it's not going quick enough. So if you aren't someone who's talking about time and deadlines from a sort of like you're beating yourself up over it, short term, that can often be very useful. Is like, come on, you can do it. But there's a difference into it, come on, you're going to fail, to come on, you can do it. So that was one of the things I wanted to talk about, success without stress, is just noticing the stress you're putting your system on. Too many people work really long hours going, right, I'm going to keep doing this, and when I retire, I'm going to rest. And one of the things that Mark and I are really clear about, and that's one of our joint visions and goals, is that life is about living. So we plan for the future, but live for the present. And so we can plan for the future, but the planning for the future cannot be at the expense of living now and taking the pressure off our system. So yesterday, after the first 3 hours of tiling, we went for a walk around the block, went to the shop and got some lunch, came back, did another 3 hours of tiling, and then we took a break and had an hour in the garden and read books. You absorbed the sunshine, and then while I was prepping dinner, he did another hour to get ready for today. So we built in some sunshine time, we built in some relaxation time, we built in some downtime, even though we've got this deadline that we have to hit. And what's working to make sure we know we're on track is we now, because we can go back over it, we know it's taken approximately an hour to fit 3 tiles. We know that we have 40 tiles left to do, so 39 to be precise. So we can work out from there how many hours it's going to take. We know that he has been able to do 3 hours Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that he could do 6 hours Saturday, 6 hours Sunday, and we've got a bank holiday Monday. So we can go, okay, we can, and we know, the really worst case scenario, we can leave the top rail and just leave the bottom, get the bottom done so that the flooring person can do their job, and we can finish off the top tiles after the floor's been done. So we've mapped out we've looked at how long it's taken us, and we're looking at how much time we've got left, and we have a choice. I could go back to the carpet guy and say, actually, we're going to need to put you off 1 more week, because that deadline was giving us something to work to. I don't want to mess the carpet guy around. I don't want to sort of keep putting him off, but ultimately, that's what we're juggling in life all of the time. We're trying to juggle between what we've got to do and when we've got to work with other people. So success without stress for me is about you understanding what your success is, but also understanding when deadlines, I'm having to remind myself why I wrote this time because I wrote it quickly this morning, is remember that those deadlines are there to motivate you, not to scare you. And if you're putting yourself under pressure, the likelihood is you're going to go into that fight, flight, freeze part of your mind. You can't think more clearly, and you cannot work with clarity and confidence. So one of the things that we were doing with the tiling yesterday was definitely having to go back over. So that was one thing. The second thing is about deadlines and successes. You know, when you're seeking approval, if you're doing this because there's a fear of letting someone down. So I've just heard myself, I don't want to let Jeff down, the carpet guy, the vinyl guy. So if that is the case, and what I want is I want Mark not to be stressed. I want him to enjoy the process of tiling. I really would like my office back, and I don't want to let down Jeff. Rather than pushing myself to do it because there's, you know, a fear of being shamed or fear of upsetting or fear of letting Jeff down, I can simply have that conversation and just say to Jeff, look, I'm in this situation where I put myself under quite a bit of pressure because I don't want to let you down. I know we've moved the appointment once. If I move it again, is that going to be okay? And please tell me if it's not. If you're feeling anything at the other end of this text, you're feeling disgruntled, cheesed off, feel, you know, not being respected, then speak up now, because if that's the case, I want you to be respected, I want you to be okay, and it would help me if I could move the deadline. But if it's going to mean you don't feel respected and you don't feel valued if I move the deadline, then I'll keep the deadline and I'll make it work this end. And that's how I will deal with the fact that I don't want to let somebody down. Because if you are pushing yourself to do something for approval, there's a really good chance it's all based on assumption. It's all based on, I'm really not ready for this call today because I realised I haven't got my computer glasses on, so it's why my eyes are aching. So no microphone, no glasses. Okay, I'm getting there now. So if you're doing it for approval, there's a likelihood you do it on assumption. So a really good example, another for this week, just reflecting on this week, is I'm considering signing up for a networking event that meets on a Friday at lunchtime. But I have my call with my coach for 2 to 3 hours every other Friday. So it clashed with that. So I've checked with my coach, could they do Tuesday? And it's already started. She's come back going, yeah, I can do this, I can do it. And I'm thinking, oh, actually, I could work it better. So she's come back and gone, well, I can do it on Tuesday, but I have to finish it this time because I've got pole classes. So she's put her criteria. She said what she's got to do. I know what I've got to do. And we're now wiggling. And it's really interesting because it's a really good chance that moving it to that day will work better for both of us. But too often people don't do what's right for them because they assume it's not going to be okay for the other person. So one of the things I want you to think about is if you hear your critic going, oh, I don't want to let people down, have you checked whether you're letting that person down? How often when you've been really up against it and somebody has cancelled an appointment for you, like I can't do the dinner party, not that we've had to do a lot of those recently, but a client cancels an appointment and you feel this reprieve, you go, because you're like, oh my God, I so needed that space in my diary. We make so many assumptions that we're going to disappoint or let people down. But if we have that helpful and honest conversation and say, look, I don't want to let you down. I don't want to disappoint you. And it's important you put the and, not the but. And so I want to make sure I've respected you, I've honoured you, I've valued your time. And I'm really putting myself under pressure right now. So what would work for me is to move it to this date. Would it work for you? Now, here's the thing. If you want to better manage yourself, your time and other people, you first of all have to absolutely know what you want. And if what I want is my husband not to be stressed, I want the job done as quickly as possible, but as well as possible. And I'd rather have it done well than quick. And I want to get all the parts of the puzzle to work. So I've got to fit in with the other tradesmen that have got to work with us. Where it's just the vinyl fitter. We've done everything else ourselves right now. We've got to work in around these other people. So when you've got all these moving parts, the first thing you have to do is know what you want, what works for you, and why. So for me, it's always about honouring and respecting myself and honouring and respecting other people's time. Then when it comes to time, one of the biggest things people go, oh, you don't value my time. I can tell you now that most projects when you start, you have no idea how long they're going to take. So it's taken us 4 weeks and just this week, but we've been timing how long it takes to do the tiles. What we also know is that this wall that we've got left is mainly big tiles. There's not as much cutting, so there's not as much opportunity for tiles to snap or break or have to redo them. We've shifted back to the ready-made adhesive, which will save some time. So we've done some things we can save time, and we know this wall was likely to be quicker. But we also know we have a wall that we've never done before. We've got a tile around a window. I say we, Mark's doing it. I'm just coaching and supporting and bringing tea, coffee and food and encouraging him to stop for breaks. We've got the tiling to do around the window, and we have no idea how long that's going to take. But what we do know is we could leave that and do it after the floor's been done. So we have been looking at the timings of what needs to happen before this can happen. And most people, I think, forget when they're trying to manage themselves and other people that you can look back on what you've done before and look at how long things taken. Now, here's the challenge. It feels like it's taken forever is different to how long did it actually take. So if you are someone that's getting really stressed about deadlines and time and how long things are taking, have a think about how are you measuring that time? What do you do to track your time? So are you actually physically timing it? Do you know how long it really did take? Or are you doing it from a sort of an emotional basis of it feels like it's taken forever or it feels like it's going really fast? So check in with yourself about that, because your perceptions of time will often impact how you feel, and therefore that will cause that stress level to go up. And actually, if you could do it from a real calm place and confident place, you're more likely to get more done in the time that you've got anyway. And then when it comes to managing expectations, one of the reasons sometimes we don't want to have those conversations with people is because they might feel disappointed. They might say something that basically says, oh, you've let me down, or I feel really good, or whatever. They might have an emotional reaction or a response to you changing the plan, because that now disrupts their system. They've got all their pieces of the puzzle in. They think that's going to happen. And when you want to move, let me talk to Jeff, when you want to move that over another day or another week, that means all of his Jenga pieces have to be reshuffled. But what I will say to you is most of us, when we have to change something, it kind of disrupts our system a little bit. And most of us, though, can go, oh, yeah, okay. Asking questions like, if we were to move it by a week, would that work for you? You're putting the person's attention on answering it from a perspective of, would it work? They can say, no, it wouldn't work. You go, well, I'd really like to postpone it. When would it work best? Because it might be that they need to postpone it by 2 weeks. Now, here's the interesting thing. When you get that feedback, if they want to go, if you can't do it here, well, I can't do it for now. If you're going to move it from this day, Cheryl, you're going to have to wait 3 weeks. In this particular case right now, if it's pretty much done and all I'm waiting for is flooring, I could wait 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Actually, it's okay for me to wait a long time for that flooring. But in another example with maybe my business or getting the website done or things like that, sometimes when someone says, well, I can't move it to when you want it, but I could move it to 5 or 6 weeks. Sometimes when that time goes further away, you realise that actually you don't want to move it that far. And so you will rejuggle and keep to the original deadline. But we often don't ask these questions because we don't want to have these conversations because we don't want to lose face, or we don't want to interrupt, or we don't want to, whatever it might be. So how could you frame it when you start those conversations off? What could you be saying to them? I tend to start with, I just need to check with you about deadline. All right. I absolutely can keep to the original deadline if we need to. I always affirm that if we have to and you need me to, I can keep to the original deadline. I will make that happen. And if there's some wiggle room on it, if there's any chance we can move it, if we can move the time. So if I contact a client who's got a session booked with me and I get the opportunity to go and speak at an event, or I can be at something else, most of the time, in fact now all of the time up to now, I have contacted them and said, I can absolutely do your session at the time that we've agreed. I don't need to change it. And if there's any way we could push it back forward an hour or back an hour, it would give me the opportunity to do something else that I'd like to do. Does that work for you? And my clients will always come back going yes or no. And if they've said no, I go absolutely fine, no problem. And I have this innate trust that that is where I'm meant to be and I don't need to be doing the other thing. If that feedback comes back and I really feel like, oh, I really wanted to do it, I will have that conversation with my clients and say to them, it's only on getting your feedback that I've realised I really, really want to be at this other place or two. Can we move it to this time and give some other choices? Because if you don't listen to the feedback your system's giving you, you end up doing things you don't really want to do when you want to do them. And often that has a knock-on effect to how you show up with people that you care about. So I want you to think about your critic this morning. Think about last week. What kind of self-talk have you had? How are you talking to yourself and about yourself? Please comment below. I've got a couple of people live. Please say hello to me. Let me know who you are. It'd be lovely to hear from you. So I want you to think about, first and foremost, what would you like to have happen this week? How do you need to be? And what kind of resources, so what might put my teeth back in. I obviously need new teeth. What kind of resource and support might you need for you to be able to make that change easier? And that resource and support might be that you change the way that you talk about yourself. It might be the way you talk to yourself. It might be that you need some resource and support to think about how you're going to frame it, so being objective about it. So if you were going to be in this situation where you weren't going to change it because you didn't want to let somebody down, what's the worst that could happen if you have the conversation and say to them, look, I absolutely can. I always say to people, you are my priority. My clients tend to say, you are my priority. This appointment doesn't have to change. I'm just checking with you. And the reason I say all that is because I tend to work with people pleasers. So some people will go, oh, it's okay, Shari, if you need to rearrange, just do it. and then they won't like it, and then they'll resent it later. So I really encourage people to think about, if they change, what's the impact on them? So you thinking about what the impact's going to have on you, and then being willing to ask questions and listen to what the impact is going to be on other people, you can start to then assimilate and work out. Sometimes it's like, for me, it's just like, oh, it's a bit awkward. But for them, it's devastating. You go, oh, actually, okay. Awkward, devastating. They're a priority on this occasion. But if every time you want to do something, you prioritize everybody else and you default that their needs and wants are greater than yours without having the conversation, making assumptions, it would be better that way. You set yourself up for a lot of stress, and you may get the success, but you may not have your health and your happiness. Your performance will be impacted over time. Your relationship with yourself and other people will be impacted. So have a think about, what would you like to have happen? How do you need to be? And what kind of resource or support might you need? And if you don't know, that's when reflecting, and that's where things like coaching that we do at Step by Step Listening gives you the opportunity to go, okay, so when you're in a similar situation to before, what worked? And sometimes, do you know what? We just haven't ever been asked that question. We don't know what kind of resource or support we need. We only know that when it doesn't work, we really don't like it. So have a think about for yourself, what kind of resource or support would you need right now to change an appointment with somebody? What would you need to know? What would you need to believe? What would you need to hear and see? Either from yourself or the other person. And then for them to be okay with the change, what might they need to hear and see? In my experience, what they need to hear and see is that you really care about them, that you value them, and that the appointment is important to you, and that they are important to you. And if they say no, it's going to be okay with you. So obviously you don't say that to people if it's not going to be okay. If you don't want to, if there is absolutely no, if you just have to cancel or you have to postpone or you have to rearrange, then you don't give people choices. But what you can do is you can just check that they're okay with it. I really need to cancel this meeting, or I need to rearrange it, or I need to postpone it, and I want you to be okay with it. What could I do, say, or what could I do for that to be okay for you? And sometimes all that people need to know is that you've asked that question. They just need to know that you are consciously aware that you're having an impact on them, and that you are disrupting their day, their system, their process, and that you have some awareness of that. And that in itself often is all that's needed. Hope that's been useful for you today. Have a fantastic week. I'm really looking forward to working on my new website, which will be coming out in the middle of May. And then on the middle of May to the middle of June, I am absolutely head down to get Do, Delegate or Ditch, the 7 Principles of Motivated Action, out, published and ready for you to read. So have a gorgeous week. I'd love to know what you'd like to have happen, how you need to be, and what kind of resource or support you might need. Speak to you soon. Bye.